Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today I am talking to Robert the Narraider. He's got a brand new Kickstarter going on right now. It's got 16 days left at the time of this show. He will be hopefully seeing that come to fruition in 16 days. But it is a fantasy tabletop RPG, brand new system from his wonderful, beautiful, brilliant mind, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say about it. Before we jump into that, though, I do want to quickly do a couple short promos. Tomorrow night, we have a one-shot scheduled with some fellow TikTok creators. There's 6 of them. And it is Le Top Hat celebration of hitting 500 followers over there, which now he's hitting almost 1,200. So that's going to be an awesome time tomorrow night at 11:30 p.m. And Saturday, we are back with the Black Rock Adventures campaign. This is my homebrew campaign, and I'm very excited for that. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and would love to see you tune into both of those. Now, with that, Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me. First of all, I have been in the TTRPG hobby for 30 plus years. 3 of my friends came to me one day and asked me if I wanted to play a game. They wanted to introduce me to a game called Champions, the super role-playing game.
Yes.
And I had never heard of the game before. But I made a character, we played the game, and I have been in love ever since.
That's awesome.
And so 30 years later, I am trying to bring my own or share my own tabletop role-playing game with other hobbyists out there. For half a decade, I've been doing my own YouTube channel, Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. And I started working on Peace, the high fantasy tabletop role-playing game that I'm kickstarting over a decade ago.
That's awesome.
It wasn't a priority, obviously. But with all of the craziness of the last year, I was really able to do a lot of great work in finishing it off and then trying to bring it to fruition through Kickstarter.
That's really cool. So I also got into tabletop RPGs with a superhero RPG. For me, it was Heroes Unlimited by Palladium Books. And I was introduced, I was 12, I think, at the time. This is back in the 90s. And a 26-year-old guy, friend of the family that we hadn't seen, my mom hadn't seen in years, she ran into at the pool at the apartment complex we were in. And yeah, rest is history. So that's really cool that we got that in common.
Superhero games got to stick together, man.
You know it. I love superhero RPGs. I really do. I wish, there were more. I wish, they were a thriving thing, but it seems like it's a hard thing to gain traction for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So with that, you said you had a YouTube channel for about 6 years. So I've had mine since 2012 or 13, I think. It's a long uphill battle, but with that, I mean, everyone should go check out your YouTube channel. You have a lot of videos about Peace the RPG over there. What was it that motivated you, though, to start your own RPG?
Well, I think I fell in love with the hobby fast and really hard. I think maybe 5 years after I started, I wanted to bring my own creativity to life. And I really didn't find something that made a lot of sense for me until maybe 10, 15 years ago. I was just sitting around one day and I thought to myself, to this point, I had only played maybe 2 high fantasy tabletop role-playing games that at some point in my character's career didn't make him feel like a supporting character in a fantasy novel. Not a main character, that guy that if he died, the main characters would mourn for maybe half a page and then they would forget about him. And so I've always wanted to make a game where it never made you feel like less than the hero of the story. That sometimes that can be a trope in high fantasy where, it's 0 to hero. So
Yeah.
I wanted to make a game where characters always felt competent. Now, fast forward to where we are now, where the game is actually live on Kickstarter, and I'm hoping to bring it to life. Obviously, some of the most well-known high fantasy games out there allow characters to be really competent. But luckily, when I started the design process for Peace, I really focused on what I was trying to do with the game. And mechanically, I think the game is very different from anything else. So though Peace will be another high fantasy offering that has really competent characters, even from first level, there are only 10 hero levels in the game. Mechanically, it does things that no other game does. For instance, it treats a character's charisma as useful and effective as their other modes of dealing with conflicts. The system varies the number of attacks characters can make from turn to turn based on the tactics they use, the abilities they have, and how they built their characters. So there are some really unique aspects. So just having a character that always feels like the hero is not the only selling point for the game. And also with the prophecy meter system that tracks how well the heroes are doing against evil is something that players have told me they really find unique and really interesting mechanic. So luckily, Peace is also bringing those aspects to the hobby.
Nice. So by your account, would you say it's like a epic, heroic, good versus evil kind of game?
Absolutely. Yeah. The whole premise of Peace, the title doesn't really refer to what will happen in this crazy fantasy world after the good guys win. The title of the game, Peace, Peace, such as love and peace, refers to an ancient prophecy in the setting that says that this world will only realize peace once it has destroyed itself during the struggle between good and evil. So your character in the game is trying to prevent the prophecy from coming to fruition. So heroes have to be brave, they have to be wise. In a lot of cases, they can't just throat punch every problem. And as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, the prophecy meter is really what speaks to the premise of the game. The prophecy meter tracks the hold that evil has on the affairs of the heroes. So at the beginning of a campaign, for example, you roll 2d6, the players do, and that sets where the meter is on a scale of 1 to 15. 1 being things are really good, 15 being things are really bad. And as the players play the game, their good deeds, their evil deeds, and some unintended consequences can adjust where the meter is. The meter has a narrative effect on the game, but obviously it, of course, has a mechanical effect on the game. One of the basic mechanical effects the prophecy meter has is that depending on the numeric value of where the meter is, that gives the bad guys every scene a number of bennies or action points equal to the meter's numeric value. So that's kind of the base mechanical effect of the prophecy meter. And there are also some other cool effects that I really love, and maybe we can talk about those as well.
That sounds kind of interesting. So it sounds like you play Savage Worlds too.
I have.
Well, what was the term? You said bennies, but you called it something else as well.
Yeah, they're
points?
mostly called battle scars.
Battle
Is what.
scars.
Yeah, and they allow for re-rolls. They allow the user to lower a target's defense. Yeah. They allow you to regain hit points or composure. So yeah, battle scars are kind of important to the game.
So I personally love stuff like that, like action points, hero points, whatever you want to call them in various systems and how they work. I think those are a really cool mechanic in almost every game I've ever played. So kudos to that. I like that. So how long, like, from the moment you decided you wanted to make this RPG, how long would you say it took you to come up with not the concept, because that's probably the easier part, but how long do you think it took you to flesh out something that you could run at a table?
Wow. It probably took me 6 to 8 months to really flesh out the core mechanics of the game. I always knew that I wanted the characters to be competent, even from first level.
Yeah.
And I knew that I would want a system that would allow the heroes to wade into a large number of bad guys and have a good chance of succeeding. So one of the first things I wanted to do is to make a multi-attack system, but I didn't want to make a multi-attack system that basically said, okay, guys, at third level, you have 3 attacks. Because I kind of, when I was, playing games that kind of motivated me to make to create peace, that made my characters feel kind of frail and unimportant. I remember times when I did get 2 multi-attacks, and for a lot of characters, it made combat seem really samey. For instance, if you are a melee fighter with multiple attacks, once you get into melee range, every turn pretty much becomes the same turn.
I hit it with my sword.
Pass the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, with peace is it varies the number of attacks you have from turn to turn. So one turn you could have 5 attacks. One turn you could have 1 attacks. And it was really important because I wanted players to be able to engage multiple enemies and have a really good chance of surviving. So I came up with the concept of breaking conflicts into 3 areas: warfare, influence, which is charisma, and power, which of course is casting spells. And at the beginning of each turn, your player decides how are they going to approach this round. Are they going to punch, scratch, kick, or crossbow? That would be warfare. Are they going to try to frighten, taunt, or influence? That would be their influence stat. Or are they going to cast prayers or spells? That would be power. They roll a number of d6 associated with that stat, and that generates their attack points. And then every time you can spend a number of attack points equal to the appropriate defense for your attack, you get an opportunity to harm a foe. So I find that keeps conflicts unpredictable, dynamic, and it keeps rounds from feeling samey. So yeah, it took me probably 6 to 8 months to flesh out the combat system to the point where I felt comfortable sitting down with my friends and doing some play testing.
Nice. How many hours do you think you have invested into play testing this thing? And
oh my God,
you don't have to guess. That's a good thing. If you don't know, that's a great thing to.
Yeah,
that means it's well play tested, guys.
Absolutely.
So, are there any mechanics that you had thought you were going to have in the game that you were kind of excited about, and then maybe through play testing, or maybe it just didn't jive or whatever with what you were writing, that you took out of the game?
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing that immediately jumps to mind is initially the game master had to generate attack points for all of the NPCs. Of course, he would do it in groups of NPCs, because the way the game works is, as I mentioned, heroes have 10 levels. There are 10 hero levels in the game from 1 to 10, but there are also 6 NPC levels in the game, but they actually have names. So in the game, you have minions, thugs, lieutenants, chiefs, boss, and overlord. So the way the game used to work is the game master would have to generate attack points for every category of NPC and then spend those to get his attacks. But after several attempts at play testing, what I did was I changed that to NPCs having fixed numbers of attack points. And of course, not of course, but in peace, the way that you are attacking also determines how many attacks you're getting. So if you're really good at attacking with warfare, you're probably going to get more attacks against someone who's better at defending who's better with magic, because they'll have a lower defense against warfare attacks. So the system works out so that the NPCs have an appropriate number of attack points to get multiple attacks against enemies who may be slightly vulnerable to their form of attack. And yeah, that was something that I got rid of. That was it. Now it frees the game master up so much that they don't have to. Yeah,
they can get caught up more in the description and the narrative and helping the players figure out what's, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So it sounds like maybe if you have two martial type characters or warfare type characters, they're going to have less attacks on each other.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, like you said, warfare against like a spellcaster, they're both probably going to do more attacks to each other because they don't have the defenses for each other.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting because it kind of plays up the idea of like technique in a real fight. Like, when you're fighting a boxer, two boxers fighting, and they're real good, like they're not just sitting there hitting their combos that they would do in the gym against the sparring partner. Like, they got to pick and choose their shots a little bit.
Yeah.
Logically, that makes complete sense to me. That's cool. I like that.
And it's a natural balancing mechanic as well, because as a game master, if you have a tank in your party and you want to challenge him, you can throw a couple of magic users into the conflict or the encounter, and that will test them a little bit. So I have a friend who is an incredible character builder, amazing at optimizing characters, and he wasn't quite successful breaking the game because inherently in pieces design, the way no character can be good at attacking and defending in every way that you can attack and defend in the game. Yeah. So it balances out and allows the GM to find ways to challenge the optimizers in their group, so to speak.
Interesting. So the what made you decide to go with a Kickstarter rather than releasing what you have through like a drive-through RPG and just using the money to put it back into like making an Ultimate Edition or something?
Well, Kickstarter is a great way to know what you have. And I think the main reason is because of the cost of illustrating the core rule book. The core rule book I have clocked at probably around 400 pages.
Right. Okay.
And it would take a lot of financing to illustrate the book to the level that I would like it illustrated. So I thought maybe I would go ahead and kickstart the game. Oddly enough, this is going to sound really weird, but the dream for Peace was never to make it available to anyone else other than the playtesters.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the dream for the game initially was I just wanted to one day hold in my hand a completed, professionally published copy of a game of my creation, my system, my world. And that was the dream. It was never, I'm going to, put this book out there and share it with the world. But then when I finished the book and I had a little bit of art, but I have in the core rule book, there's a 70 NPC bestiary, and the book just didn't feel complete. Right. So I had to take it to Kickstarter to complete the vision.
That makes sense. So like you, I have a dream of doing the exact same thing, not for a system, but for my homebrew setting. Like one day, and I'm not a good writer. That's the other thing. I just really want my world to be a published thing that I can like give to people who play in my world at my home game. And like, here you go, guys. You don't have to read it, but if you want to, that's all the information you need. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, man.
I love it. So with your system, do you feel like you've taken inspiration from any other games that you've played? Maybe some lesser known games other than like, I'll just let you answer that rather than throw out ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I definitely think that Peace is a really, really unique system. Yeah. But some of the mechanisms I definitely did pull actually from outside of the tabletop role-playing game hobby. For instance, the talents in the game, the tricks and maneuvers that heroes use that kind of set them apart from the common folk. The talent system I was inspired by a card game called Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's the most popular collectible card game.
Magic the Gathering. That's like for magicians to just play around and do card tricks, right?
Right. Yeah, one of the they just brought out a Dungeons and Dragons inspired set for Magic. And basically, what I took from Magic is, of course, in a card game, you pretty much have to have the instructions for the card on every card. And so what I did with talents is each talent in the game is essentially a small instruction manual for how, when, and what the talent does. So literally, you could, if you wanted to, and this is kind of a trend that's been in the hobby, if you wanted to print out cards for it representing each talent, you basically have to know very little about the system to know exactly what the talent does. So I like that small instruction manual, easy to understand feeling of a Magic card. And so I made the talents that way. Like sometimes I'll see a game that has like talents or maneuvers, and then in the description above the talent, they'll have the timing of it, like it's an instant move, or it's a duration move, of a move of certain duration. And I'm just like, dude, if you just explain that in shorthand in the description of the talent, you don't need all of that timing information outside of the description. So yeah, that was something that really inspired me, the way that Magic cards make things really succinct and easy to understand in a very short format.
Nice. So something like, when someone asks me about an RPG, like what would be a good game for me, or would this game be a good system for me to try? I usually will try to say, well, this game in particular is for someone who would like X, Y, and Z, right? Like, for example, there's two very popular fantasy RPGs right now out there, really big ones. One is really crunchy. One is less crunchy. And so, like, typically I will tell the crunchier person, like, if you don't mind doing, like, math or keeping track of multiple things while other things are going on, this is a good game for you. Whereas I'll say something like this, where you just have to roll a single die and get a number and beat a number, this is good for you. How would you, like, what kind of person would like Piece the RPG?
I think that someone who likes a rules medium system.
Okay.
So the system is not rules light, and it's not a super crunchy, rules heavy, high fantasy game. So it's right in the middle. You feel like you have enough to do from round to round where things don't feel samey, but you don't feel overwhelmed. The other thing that I think is what's really important to me as a player is that the hero creation process creates a full character. The last two steps of the hero creation process in the game ask the player to determine what drives their hero.
Nice. And
to determine the relationship that is most important to them among the other characters in the adventuring party. Oh, so not only do you have a rules medium system that has enough mechanics to not make conflicts feel samey, but also not overwhelming, but it is a game that asks you to have a reason for what you do outside of killing things and taking their stuff. So if you're a type of player who that would appeal to, Peace is the game for you.
Nice. What's the dice mechanic, or what are the dice mechanics from a fundamental standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So we use all D6s.
Okay.
You have 3 attack stats: warfare, influence, and power, and those are rated with D6s and a modifier. As I mentioned, you at the beginning of each round, you roll the number of D6, you add the modifier, and that generates your attack points. Then each attack stat has an associated defensive stat, and if you can spend a number of attack points equal to your target's appropriate defense, you get what is called a damage check. Damage check is very straightforward. It's a 2d6 roll, and you're going against a fixed target number, and that target number is based on your level and the target's level. So there's a little chart in the game, and I think it's kind of elegant, and it can easily be ported over to other games. Your ability to harm someone against their will is based on your relative levels. So you basically cross-reference the hero's level with the NPC's level, and that gives you a number that falls somewhere on 2d6. Then you roll against that target number, and if you're successful, you deal a fixed amount of damage to your target. The other core mechanic in the game are attributes, and attributes are probably the mechanic that most role players will be familiar with. It's actually a set of 10 categories. And in some games, they would be considered attributes. In other games, they would be considered skills. So basically, you have acrobatics, athletics, knowledge, education, writing, survival, thievery, endurance, and I may be missing some, but yeah. And those, when you want to do something outside of combat for task resolution, it's called an attribute check, and it's very similar to a damage check. You roll 2d6, you add your total attribute, and you go against a target number determined by the game master. Very recognizable to anyone who's ever even thought about playing a role-playing game, or you go with against a roll of someone who's opposing you. So yeah, those it's all d6s. You will almost never be rolling more than 4d6 in the game ever. My days of rolling 12 and 15 d6 to do attacks is over. So sorry, Shadowrun. That's a game I love, but yeah, I'm just too old to be rolling 20 d6. I can't do it anymore. So yeah, those are the core mechanics. I love dice, obviously. I love mechanics, but sometimes less is more. So you'll very seldom find yourself rolling more than 4d6 for anything.
So even like the highest level character casting the biggest, baddest spell they have is still going to be basically a 2d6 for damage?
Yeah, you're going to be rolling a 2d6 to see if you hit your target. And damage in the game is fixed because that's I know it's kind of a give or take. I know players love rolling dice to damage, but also the feel bads of I rolled a 1. With damage. So you always are pretty much dealing maximum damage. And of course, there are mechanics in the game that allow you to increase your damage. So you're not just stuck at your fixed damage. But I think the game has enough rolling already. Yeah. So that's kind of where the rules medium considerations come into play.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have like a critical hit type of mechanic in there?
Yes. So weapons and spells have something called an SCM, which is a stun check modifier. And essentially the way it works is the damage check and attribute check mechanics that we've talked about. You should always have one of your D6 maybe be a different color, and you designate that as your fate die. And that die explodes. So when you roll a 6, you total up your roll and you continue rolling. And every time you roll a 6, you keep adding and rolling. And with weapons and spells, if your roll is equal to your original target number plus the stun check modifier for the weapon or spell, you stun the opponent. So that is the closest thing to a critical. And basically, a stunned character loses their next turn. So yeah, that is kind of a way to get a critical hit.
Wow. That sounds pretty good. I like the idea that you could and I'm assuming this would work against players too, but I like the idea that you could actually, explode dice. I love that. I've always loved that in games. But the idea that they lose their whole turn, because that just makes it way more impactful than just, you did extra damage.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
you're doing the Kickstarter now, 16 more days. Go support it, guys. What is the money from the Kickstarter going towards? Because you've already got the game done. correct?
Mhm.
Is it
Yep.
going for art, or what is the plan?
Yeah, it's all it's mostly art and editing. So our funding goal is $5,500, and almost all of it is going to compensating artists. There's still some editing that we have to do, so a little bit of the funding is going to go to pay editors. But to give you an idea, at this point, the full book, not including stretch goals, has been laid out and partially edited. So literally, the reason that we're doing the Kickstarter is to pay artists and finish off editing. So the book is ready to go. So there is no question as to whether or not this book is going to be released. As a matter of fact, if you go to the Kickstarter or if you go to the website, peacetherpg.com, of course, PEACE, as I said, as in love and peace, you can take a look at the PDF, which the layout is very similar. Of course, the I call it the basic edition is very art-like, because that's what the whole point of the Kickstarter is to fund illustrating the full core rule book. But you can see art, the art that we do have, and see the layout. And it is the game is essentially finished, other than those small items.
So the link to the website, guys, is in the description. So feel free to head on over there. You can listen to us while checking that out. Do you have any artists picked out already?
Yes, I've been working with some fantastic artists for the game. I have all of the player heritages illustrated. So the game has the full version of the game has 6 player ancestries. You have elves, humans, and half giants, which are called titans. The titans were once worshipped as gods by the elves, but when the elves needed the titans the most, the titans fell for a reason that has been lost to time, and now they roam the setting, trying to find their place among mortals. So if you have a group with an elf and a titan, it could be a very interesting dynamic. And then you have goblins, trolls, and full-blood orcs available in the full edition of the game. So yeah,
those are all playable?
All playable. Oh. And in the basic edition of the game, which only goes, you have some builds, hero builds from 1st to 3rd level. You only have elves, humans, and full-blood orcs available in the basic edition of the game. Okay. If you want to play the game, you can definitely play from level 1 to 3. Yeah.
So that brings me. This is a perfect segue, because I've been thinking about this. So obviously, you have your own setting for this game, correct?
Yeah.
Is that all written into the game as well, or at least Absolutely. Like a section? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Now, is that a world you designed to just play in over the years, or how did your setting come about?
Well, the setting was pretty much the last thing that I completed for the game. So the as I laid it out for you, it's almost is exactly how it went. I hate to admit this, but the first thing that came to mind was what I was trying to achieve mechanically, and the setting came later. So I knew what I wanted to achieve mechanically. You're not going to judge me for that.
No, that is probably so. Having the setting first. So I'm someone who's made my own homebrew world, and I've pigeonholed a bunch of settings into it because I want it to be like this big kitchen sink of everything. You know what I mean? Whereas if I had like a specific system and then I tried to just make my setting for that one system, that system will complement that setting far better than what the heck I'm trying to do, where I'm like, oh, I've played Pathfinder a little bit, so I got some of this stuff. Oh, I play D&D over here. Oh, played Palladium Fantasy over here. Like, you know what I mean? So all that stuff, some stuff just doesn't work right now, and I have to make it up.
Yeah, so I think I successfully accomplished what I was trying to accomplish mechanically. Yeah. And then I started thinking about a premise, and the word peace just came to me. It's kind of a weird name for a high fantasy game. It may remind you of maybe anime, like the title of something that would be like an anime.
There's a book I think called like Peace as well.
Oh yeah,
Like that was the first thing that struck my mind, and then I looked into it. I remember going, "Oh, this is like epic high fantasy."
Yeah, and so I had to come up with, okay, so if it's going to be called peace, what does that mean? And I came up with the idea of peace actually referring to this world self-destructing. The world is so tumultuous. It will only realize peace after it has destroyed itself during the struggle between good and evil. And then I came to the setting and the idea of the prophecy meter tracking how well the heroes are doing at saving this world. So that was the order that the things came. And yeah, the setting was completely constructed for the game, and it was a brand new setting. Yeah.
That's interesting. So where did you start when you started your setting? Because normally, like if it's in your game, you're taught like, oh, well, you could start small, like with the town and work your way out, things like that. So it sounds like you were coming up with a setting specifically for your game. Yeah. Where did you start? How did that come about? How did you flesh it out?
So I started with the ancestries of the game. I started with what I wanted in the game, and I started building the relationships. So I thought that I would have the elves be former rulers of the setting. And then I thought it would be interesting if when they lost their rule of the world, there would be a reason for it. And I thought it would be interesting if that relationship of their fall from power would be based on something else. So I related their fall to the Titans, another player race that were once worshipped as gods. And then I wanted to link all of the different heritages together. So the trolls are kind of standoffish. They are illusionists and shapeshifters, and they really don't want to get involved in the affairs of the rest of the setting. But when the orcs arrived in the setting and started to conquer the humans and the elves, the trolls knew that they would be next. So they had no choice but to get involved, and they used their ability to work behind enemy lines using their illusion magic and their shape-shifting abilities to help defeat the orcs. And the goblins kind of threw in with the orcs, and the humans today are probably the most influential part of the setting now that the orcs have been defeated and kind of roam aimlessly through the endless plains, the center portion of the setting. So yeah, I started with the relationships between the different peoples of the setting, and then went from there.
Interesting.
Because it could be a ginormous, as you said, it could be a ginormous task.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, really, the people in the setting are what change everything and take it all the directions it would go. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So did this started as something you did with your home group then, I'm assuming?
Yes.
How many different groups have you played this with?
Let's see, my core home group. 1, 2, 3, 4. Around 6 different groups all told, between my local home group, friends and acquaintances from my friendly local game store, and other groups that I was able to cobble together to do play testing. I would say, 5 or 6 different distinct groups. I have run the game for my local group. I've run the game from 1st to 3rd level, and then we did a campaign from 5 to 8. And every other group that I've played with, we started at 1st level, and we didn't get above 3rd level. But yeah, with my home group, we've done all the way from 1st to about 8th level.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that's further than most like other game systems like my groups have ever gotten up to. So it seems like most of my game groups, like we fizzle out for whatever reason, and then we play something else or whatever. So
yeah,
very cool.
True.
So when this gets funded on Kickstarter, how long until you have a product in people's hands?
So we're shooting for October of next year. The reason for such a long lead time when the book is 90% laid out is because the core rule book will have somewhere in the neighborhood of 120, 130 illustrations. The bestiary by itself is 70 NPCs that have to be illustrated. So with that number of illustrations, and with the realities of working with other individuals who have lives, deadlines being missed, mishaps, I wanted to make sure that I erred on the side of, having maybe too much time as opposed to not enough time. So if we fund, October of next year is what we're shooting for. And obviously, if the stars align and none of my artists miss the deadline and everything is perfect, I will send the books out when they are ready. But I wanted to be realistic about, when you're working with freelancers, life happens. So sometimes,
There's nothing more frustrating too when you back something on Kickstarter and you're told a date and it shows and it sounds like a great date. You're like, oh, it'll be within 6 months of funding. Great. And then you don't see it for a year and a half, 2 years later. Like, that's the worst. I hear so many people get so upset about that, and they won't back products by that same company again or that same person again. Yeah. So that sounds good.
Yeah, I know it can be a little frustrating to see, oh man, I have to wait for this for a year. But yeah, I would rather be transparent up front and say, yeah, guys, I have been turned off by long lead times, but I just don't have it in me to lie to someone.
Yeah.
And okay, they'll back me, but then I'll just miss my when the product gets out there. I just don't have it in me. I may be in the wrong business because I don't want to lie to people.
Yeah, you're basically in sales at this point, and you're not going to be good at it if you don't lie. No, I'm just kidding. I did sales, and I didn't like any of the scripts and stuff because it's like, well, that's not true. I'm not going to say that. So I've always been someone like that who's like very transparent what's going on. Like, that's how I prefer it, and I prefer people to be that way with me, even if I don't like the answer. Like, just shoot me straight. Like,
But 100 illustrations, man, that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah. So, and how many artists are you working with again?
I've worked with half a dozen artists. So obviously, I will have to build up the number of artists that are working with me. Yeah. I've been really happy with the guys and gals that I've worked with thus far, but obviously to get this done in a year, I'm going to have to build up. So that's where all the challenge is in building up a nice a stable of artists who can hit their deadlines. That's going to be the biggest challenge because, like I said, man, the game is done. Right. I just need to get it illustrated and a little bit of editing.
And so I'm assuming with the artists too, you're trying to find artists that have a certain style that matches what you've already paid for, right?
Absolutely. And that's the other challenge. Like, you can't just have 10 artists and say, I'll give you all the work because, one artist is good at this and another artist is good at this. So, you have to match the work for the artist, and that's where a lot of the challenge comes in.
That makes sense for sure. So we're wrapping up here soon. We've only got about 10 more minutes left. So is there anything else in particular we haven't said about Piece the RPG that maybe you want to get in there that you think would be good for the viewers to hear?
I think we've covered a lot. I would just say the free basic edition of the game is out there, folks. If you go to the Kickstarter, you can find the free basic edition. I wanted to really provide the hobby with something new. The way my crazy mind works is Peace may be the only role-playing game that I ever complete in my time in the hobby. And so I'm thinking, what good does it do the hobby if I just put out the 280th version of something that already exists? No disrespect to any other creators out there, but the tagline for Peace is new setting, new rules, new experiences. So
Nice.
if you want to have a new experience, but have some familiarity, because that's also a balancing act that I try to do. Yes, my high fantasy game has elves. My friend said to me, "Oh man, you're doing a high fantasy game?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay. Well, don't have elves." And oh, I have elves because I really it's really a balancing act for me because I think that anyone who's familiar with the hobby, when you look at the mechanics of peace, you're going to see something that you haven't seen every day in the hobby. So I wanted there to be some familiarity. You know, I wanted there to be elves, goblins. Before Pathfinder Second Edition, goblins were not.
That's
in there,
true.
so they beat me to the punch on goblins. But yeah, there's some familiarity, but definitely mechanically and setting wise, peace is a new experience. And if you're looking for that around high fantasy games, please check peace out.
That sounds awesome. So with that, let's get into some general RPG questions to wrap this up so people get to know you a little better. What, other than peace, because obviously that's a big part of your life right now, what tabletop RPGs are you enjoying in 2021?
So I am playing right now. I'm playing an oldie but goodie, a classic D6 Star Wars. So I'm playing that right now. I have been reading and really enjoying Vampire 5th edition. And I think that after we finish with Star Wars, we may do that. I'm really loving Cyberpunk Red. After all my time in the hobby, I finally have a cyberpunk genre inspired rules medium, a modern system. Of course, you've had cyberpunk in the past, you've had Shadowrun, but it's finally we have a rules medium modern rule set, and I'm really loving Cyberpunk Red. I can't wait to do that. And Aliens is looking really amazing to me as well. So yeah, those are kind of the things that are on my radar right now, and I'm really enjoy reading. Probably going to do a couple of review videos on my YouTube channel, Confessions of a
Nice. I'll have to
Yeah.
check those out. It's funny. I just saw something this last, like, not even a week ago about the RPG sales. Like, and it didn't show explicit numbers, but it said that Cyberpunk this year is the #2 selling tabletop RPG.
Nice.
Behind
I can
5th edition.
believe it.
Like,
Yeah,
I
it is
couldn't believe that because, like, I don't. I'll be honest. Other than you right now, I haven't heard anybody like that I'm friends with talking about it. Like, they may have bought it. I don't know. Maybe they like the video game and so they went and bought the RPG. But I haven't heard people talking about it recently. And I mean, I used to hear about it all the time. Being a Palladium Books fan, people would talk about Cyberpunk because of the connections, sort of, to Rifts and things like that. But that's interesting. And so you said you're into that Alien, and you guys are still playing some old school D6 Star Wars. What's your character in Star Wars, by the way?
I am playing a bounty hunter. Targaryen bounty hunter. Basically, I'm a 8-foot tall cat person, and apparently the Targaryens, the women and men kind of live separate from one another. The women of the species wanted to stay home and build up their society, and the men wanted to go out and explore and hunt. And through this exploration, they've come across the Empire, and they've come across pirates and so forth. So they really don't like droids, and really don't like the experiences they've had with the pirates and so forth. So my character, he likes to smack our protocol droid around a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of like Wookiees, but just they're more of a feline race. Yeah.
Is everyone playing a bounty hunter or just you?
Just me. We have our captain is, of course, a pilot. We have a Jedi in our group and a mechanic, essentially.
Oh, okay.
A techie. So it's really fun, man. It's a blast from the past. Some of the D6 mechanics, some of the character creation stuff in Peace, you may recognize as being similar to the attribute progression in D6. Yeah.
So that is a Star Wars game I have never played. I've always heard I should play it. I've always wanted to. I almost bought it a while back on Amazon. I've played recently, and by recently I mean like a year and a half ago. I played Fantasy Flight Star Wars for the first time, and I had been itching so bad to get it. And, due to COVID, I didn't buy it last year. And then Christmas time started rolling around. And so I was like, yeah, why don't you guys buy me the starter sets? The starter sets are cheap, and it comes with the special dice. And so I got the starter sets, all of them, and then I got the first core rulebook. So and since getting it, I haven't played it, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
I know. Have you played the Fantasy Flight Star Wars yet?
Yeah, I've played Edge of the Empire. I really, really love it. My group didn't like the dice, but I am a sucker for, like, I'll say the word new experiences 1,000 times. I've been in the hobby for so long. When you do things like, these dice that allow you to narratively describe the outcome of your actions, I'm a sucker for that stuff. A lot of gamers I've talked to look at the narrative dice as a money grab, but I'm just if you can bring something to the table that I haven't seen before, when you've been role playing for 30 years and you see something new, I'm all aboard. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So
the dice were a barrier of entry that I didn't want to overcome 5 years ago. So I had a friend who was trying to get me to get the first box set a long time ago, online, a friend online. He's like, you should get this. His name was L. Garrick. He used to have a YouTube channel and stuff. He hasn't done anything in like 5 years. And he's like, you got to get this. It's such a good game. Like, it's narrative, and this is how it works. And I'm like, wait, I got to go spend $15-20 on some dice, though, to play it? He's like, well, you could convert it, like your D8s and stuff, the numbers, to the narrative stuff. I'm like, that sounds like a lot of work. And so I just put it off and didn't play it. And then I had people that were willing to run it for me. I'm like, I don't have the dice. I don't really want to get into a game that I got to go and buy the books for $50, buy the box for $30, buy the dice, all that stuff. Which obviously the starter boxes come with the dice. So if you're smart, you buy the box sets, and then you got the dice and characters and everything. Maps, tokens, all sorts of goodies.
Absolutely.
And now, since my friend Paul, who lived locally, he was on my Discord and was like, hey, I'll drive the 2 hours to run it for you. I was like, all right, we'll get some people. Let's do this. He came over. He brought all of his stuff, the dice, the books, the starter sets, and ran a session for us. And my wife, who for years has been apprehensive to try new systems, she was like, and she played a bounty hunter. She doesn't normally like fighter type classes or classes that are about just damaging things. And she's like, oh, this game's cool. And when she stamped it with the seal of approval, I knew that it was a game I had to have.
Yeah, it takes like 15. I've never taught someone the narrative dice system for Fantasy Flight Star Wars and not have them with a strong level of mastery in like 15 minutes. Because 15 minutes and they understand how the system works.
Telling someone makes it sound really complicated, I feel like. But once you do it like twice at the table, that's it. You're like, oh, wait, that's how it works. Okay, that makes complete sense. These colors can cancel each other out. These can't. Okay, we're good. Like, done. And I love the fact that you can, like, it's built into it. Sorry, I'm getting really excited about it. But it's built into it that you can succeed on a roll, but something detrimental can happen, or you can fail on a roll, but something great can happen to give you an advantage later on. Like, love that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, when you may know this, but the narrative dice system was the first time it appeared was in Warhammer Fantasy 3rd edition. They had a huge $100 box set. It came with dice and standee. And I bought that because, again, new experiences. I'd never seen anything like it. And when I found out that Fantasy Flight got a hold of the Star Wars license, I was like, oh, my God, I hope they do the narrative dice system with Star Wars. And they do. And it's a little different because it's not a whole box set. Yeah. It's the rule book and the dice are separate, other than the, like you said, the starter sets. So I was like, yes, I love this system. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're at the deadline here, but I want to thank you for giving me your time and coming on for an hour. And
thank you.
Yeah, and wish you the best with your Kickstarter. I hope it's successful and we get to see Peace the RPG come to fruition sooner rather than later.
I appreciate it.
everyone, go check it out. Peace the RPG. The website is in the link below. I believe the Kickstarter is in the link below. If not, I'll get it up there tonight. Go check it out. Consider backing it. It obviously you've heard all about how it works. You've heard about the setting. You've got to know Robert and how awesome he is. And that's Robert the Narraider. You want to plug your YouTube as well, real quick?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube at Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I talk about the challenges that you face when you become an OG in the hobby, like myself, an original gamer. And also, obviously, I talk about my crazy creations like Peace and other games, and I do reviews. So check that out on YouTube, Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master.
Check that out. And we'll get that link into the description as well if it's not already there. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.